Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for May 23rd, 2018, the 9th year of Chungi, 4th month and 9th day by the heavenly calendar. Tim Miller and Greg Knoll in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. And it's a wonderful new day that God has given us.
Praise God.
Wonderful new day.
Much to be grateful for.
Yes, we do. Right now, in the Cheongguk area, it is a little bit of rain is falling still, but that's left over from yesterday, and it's going to clear up, and it's going to be a sunshiny day later on in the day, and we're looking forward to a very nice weekend. Somehow the weather suddenly is not coming up on my screen, but it's in the 50s now, and here we go, 57 degrees right now, and we're expecting a high of 80 degrees later on today. And then this weekend, Friday and Saturday especially, it's going to get up to 85, and then dropping back down to 73, a comfortable 73 on Sunday. So I guess summer is here, basically. Less than a month ago, we were still dealing with snow, and it snowed on April 30th, less than a month ago. But it looks like summer is here now in the Poconos. It's a really beautiful time to be in this area. Yeah, all the more beautiful because of the long winter that we passed through.
Yeah, It was a very. It's those 2 days where it reached 92 degrees that. All of a sudden, this area became green. Before those days,
in early May.
Yeah, early May. It was like 2 days consecutively, where it was 92, and you can almost hear the leaves coming out. And it was a little depressing before that. It was like very, very drab.
Yes, gray, brown, and gray. Those are the colors during the winter. Yes.
But yeah, it's been a beautiful spring since, and a lot of rain. You can see the farm's coming to life. There's all sorts of colors.
Yes.
And the birds are going crazy with the sounds of spring.
Yes. Yes, it is. Let's go to our Rima. I'm in the First Chronicles 16, verse 31. Usually I get these doom and gloom Rimas, but today is very different. Today is very different. Let the heavens be glad, and let the earth rejoice, and let men say among the nations, the Lord reigneth.
Wow.
So there's a lot to be concerned about right now. Of course, Korean Peninsula, Iran, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, the Islamic invasion of Europe, all sorts of things. China, South China Sea, all sorts of things. China taking over Australia, maybe. But the Lord reigneth.
Yes.
True Father reigneth. Yes. And so we can say that. Let men say among the nations, the Lord reigneth, Father says this morning. So, don't be too worried. We need to be worried, but don't be too worried because everything is going to turn out all right, isn't it?
I had a spiritual communion this morning with Heavenly Father, and there was a brother sharing with me last night some of his trials and tribulations, and Father went through Hungnam prison as I think for an example for all of eternity on the type of attitude we can have in the midst of a deplorable and suffering situation. Father was in the death camp, people dying around him, and a deplorable situation with labor and toxic chemicals and really unthinkable behavior of one human being toward another. And it was in that environment that he wrote Blessing of Glory. And you read those words, you sing that song, and it's an example for all of us that even when your luck is down, when you think God has abandoned you, that you can have this kind of deep relationship with God and have an attitude of gratitude and find the blessing even in a very difficult situation. So I think that's what I was reflecting on my drive in this morning, that Father really set the example. He said that was probably his deepest time where he really felt closest to God, was in that difficult situation. So difficult times may be ahead. We don't know. But I think even no matter what happens, we can deepen our relationship with God and True Father at this, at this time.
Yeah, that is when also Father. I'm trying to multitask here. Father wrote the Blessing of Glory.
Yeah.
Yeah, the song, yes.
Yeah, the national anthem.
Yes, the national anthem. And that he wrote that in the time that he was, like you say, when he was his deepest, or maybe the worst. Is that what I meant? Is that what you meant? The worst, Father's most difficult time, but also when he was the closest to God, he was able to write that. And at the end where he says, "How unworthy am I?" He is speaking of himself. You know, he feels very unworthy. He felt very unworthy that to be carrying out such an important mission for God. I'm trying to multitask here and trying to get to the page where our Cheonseongyong Rima is located. If you can say a few more words, I appreciate it. For some reason,
in the midst of a death camp, he writes, "Now the light of glory arises like the sun that shines on high. Now awaken into freedom. O revive, you spirits, O revive. Wake the mountains and the valleys. Bring alive the springs of the earth. Light the world forever with the light of your rebirth." Amazing words. Then we are called to bring back the glory to the life of God above. Now the Lord, in his greatness, fills the universe with tender love, ever seeking souls awaken, ever calling them to be free. How shall I attend him who is calling to me? These are words, again, you have to know the context in which these words were written. And, is literally a situation where he was not being fed. He was in a death camp, doing hard labor every day, sleeping next to a smelly toilet every night, where the only comfort he received was, the insects that were near him, just an awful situation, and he was able to come up with this kind of...
Yeah, and in the fourth verse, the words that True Mother focused on at her remarks last year, October, I guess it was, when she spoke at her birthday celebration. In the fourth verse, it's not in the English translation, and I don't know how we can really incorporate this in the English translation, but what Father says in the fourth verse mentions, as being intoxicated in love. That it's by God's grace that I'm intoxicated in love. And she focused on those words. That's very beautiful. If there was some way that we could work those into the English words, that'd be great, but I don't know how we would. Anyway, okay, I'm ready with the Cheonseongyong Rima now. It's on page 1365 of the electronic edition that I have here, starting at the bottom of the left-hand column. He's talking about the significance of the 1800 couple blessing. This is in the chapter the book of True Families, and chapter 3. I blessed the 1800 couples this year. Originally, their blessing should have taken place last year in 1974, but it was all right as long as I performed the blessing before April of this year. It was actually done in February of 1975. From the time the blessing ceremonies were first held in April 1960 until April of this year, we are still keeping within the 14-year period. That is why I conducted the blessing in February, and so we have achieved all this within 14 years. Thus, in keeping with the completion of the second 7-year course of the Unification Church, the 1800 couples blessing conducted on the global level signifies that we have laid the foundation for worldwide restoration. So what are the 1800 couples? The number 18 is the sum of 6 plus 6 plus 6. The number of couples corresponds to this and represents our gaining supremacy over the satanic world completely. Having laid the global foundation, we can conclude that we have entered the era in which we can move the nation and the world according to God's will. This word spoken, this was December 1st of 1975. Father, of course, came to the United States in the early 70s, and then, the Day of Hope tours. I actually didn't join until after Madison Square Garden in 74, October of 74. But before I joined, there was the Day of Hope tours, and and initially, Father was welcomed everywhere he went. He was given the key to the city, wherever he went, and the governors would issue special proclamations, honoring Father. But of course, it changed. I think the big thing was Watergate. And in December, I believe it was around December of 1973, Father had a full-page ad published in many of the major newspapers in America with say "Forgive, Love, Unite," and then some kind of words, and then also Father's picture was there. And I actually remember seeing that ad. I had not joined. I was still going to college in a small college in Wisconsin, in southern Wisconsin, and I was living in I was a senior then, so we were not in a regular dormitory, but in a kind of it was a home that had been converted into student housing, and one of the people in that housing, I think probably out of her love for President Trump, posted President Nixon. Who's president now? President Nixon. At least I'm not saying it's Reagan. President Nixon cut that full-page ad out and posted it on the bulletin board there in our little place there. And I read it on that bulletin board. I remember reading it, and I remember how I reacted too. I'm sorry to say, I reacted well. Okay, we got this nice. I'm sure he's a very nice man. This Christian minister from South Korea, and I'm sure he's a very nice man, a very strong Christian and all that. But he obviously doesn't know very much about American politics. And I had a chance to mention that to Dan Pfefferman later on, I think, who had a strong role in creating that ad. And he sort of nodded, yeah, probably a lot of people reacted that way. But I think that was my first, that was the first time that I saw Father's photograph. And I think maybe that was one of the conditions maybe for me to be able to join the Unification Church. Less than a year later, actually, in October of '74. But anyway, that was the sort of the turning point, I would say, in Father's sort of public reception in America, the Watergate, and the support for President Nixon. I've talked before about John chapter 6, where in the beginning, Jesus has thousands of people following him. You have 5,000 people on the mountain there, and the disciples were worried, how should we feed these people? And we've only got one kid with a few fish and a couple of loaves of bread. And Jesus said, and the miracle of the loaves and the bread, the loaves and the fish. And then I'm sure, of course, once it got around that Jesus was handing out free food, probably thousands more came following him. So much so that in John we read that Jesus kind of ran away. But then in the middle of the chapter, he starts talking in ways that must have been, and I try to put myself in the position of people at that time, and must have been just incredibly shocking. Basically, if you read it, it's almost as if he's saying, hey, give me a knife. I'll cut off some meat and I'll give it to you. Eat my flesh and drink my blood. It's almost, to the people of that time, it must have seemed that he was advocating cannibalism. Just this was something that they could not accept. And so in verse 66, it says that, I don't have it in front of me, but from that time, many disciples no longer walked with him. And I wonder, does that include some of the 12? Because it says many disciples no longer walked with him. Does that include some of the 12? I don't know. It doesn't really go into that too much. But Father and Jesus, of course, very similar in that way, I think, where Father says, gather lots of people, gather lots of people, gather lots of people. So then we do everything we can to gather them, and he does everything that he can to turn them off. But Father, is giving God's word and giving God's standard as a prophet should, and that's what that Forgive, Love, Unite ad was all about as well. To proclaim God's position in that situation, because President Nixon was an important figure in God's providence, in the sense that he was standing up against communism, and it was a very crucial time for America to fulfill that role, and for the President of the United States to fulfill that role. So after Nixon resigned, we got Ford, and then we got Carter. And Father got up at Belvedere and says, we got to cut Carter. We got to cut Carter. In Korean, these are very, cut and Carter are some similar pronunciation. And so he would say that in Belvedere. So it became a very difficult time for America and for the world after that, lacking the strong anti-communist leadership that Nixon was providing. Even though he went to China and so forth, and he negotiated the end of the Vietnam War, but he was standing up very much to communism in that sense. So the 1800 couple blessing was performed in 1974, and 1975, February 1975. And this entered the era when we can move the nation and the world according to God's will. Yeah. Anything to say?
Yeah, it seems like always God is trying to separate good from evil, and creating these conditions where people have to make a difficult decision.
Yes. And that's the important word here, condition. Father sets conditions. So it's not that after the 1800 couple blessing, Father was then able to call up the United States President and say, hey, today I need you to do this. It's not that kind of a situation, but it's a condition whereby these things can happen in the future. And this is the concept of a condition. This is something where someone needs to write a PhD thesis sometime later on. But the role of conditions in Father's providence is very, I think, poorly understood by us. But it needs to be understood much more thoroughly. For example, people say, "Oh, Father declared that the Han Mother was one with him." And so, therefore, she is one with him, and therefore she cannot fall. But it's a condition. It's not. So Father's making conditions, and condition and actual sort of external reality are always, I would say, not usually, sometimes, but always different. And we need to understand that these conditions have been laid, but the external reality that actually meets that condition is yet to be achieved. It's sort of the Father would say that I've paved the road from the bottom of hell to the top of heaven, and I've given you even a car to travel in. So, but we still have to travel that, though. We still have to step on the gas, right? We still have to turn on the ignition and put the car into gear and move it forward. So. The fact that Father has established these conditions does not mean that everything is finished. We still have our portion of responsibility. Always there is the human portion of responsibility that has to be fulfilled. I think that point is often misunderstood and often missed. But each blessing that Father performed laid certain conditions. And the 1800 couple blessing laid this condition that having laid the global foundation, we can conclude that we have entered the era in which you can move the nation and the world according to God's will. And foundation is one word that Father would also use often, condition or foundation. Here he uses the word foundation. Kiban is foundation, chokon is condition. And he uses those words a little bit differently as well. And someone needs to study that as well. What is the difference between a foundation and a condition? Yeah. All right. Let's. Shall we go to the news?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yesterday, King talked in great detail about the Washington Post article. I wish someone would check the print edition. I was looking at it this morning again, and it may have already been published yesterday morning in yesterday morning's edition in the style section of the Washington Post. Although we understood that it was going to be in the Sunday magazine, but I'm not so sure that that's the case anymore. I wish someone in Washington would check maybe yesterday's Washington Post. Well, of course, pretty soon we'll be able to, maybe in a couple of days we'll get it here in the library. We'll be able to check it directly, but we'll have to see. Let's go through Drudge's headlines this morning. There's a Democrat who's saying we'll impeach Trump if we win back the House. Of course, they've been saying that all along. And New York Times columnist worries that Mueller investigation actually helping the president. Uh-oh, the secret is out. They've discovered the secret. We better watch out.
Well, the swamp is exposing itself
Yes.
through Mueller, I would say.
That's right. Because, the poll, the Rasmussen Daily poll, is back up to 50%. President Trump has been going between 47, 50. I don't know if it's ever been to 51 recently, but for the past several months, he's been going along that line. West Hollywood to present Stormy Daniels with the key to the city.
Why isn't that shocking?
Cohen partner flips, so that investigation going this way. Yeah. American suffers brain injury after sound incident in China. Uh-oh. This was happening in Cuba and now in China. That came up just in the last hour or so. I'm going to have to take a look at that. I haven't seen it yet. The American military is running out of bombs and parts to make more. Oh, well.
China probably has all the parts.
China has probably all the parts, yeah.
This is a problem when you outsource everything to China, including your military.
Yeah. Drought intensifies in Southwest. Rivers dry up. Yeah.
Not a good time to buy real estate in the Southwest.
Yeah. Well, maybe a good time if people are selling.
Well, I don't think it's quite reached that level yet, but I'd say in 10, 15 years, you don't really want to have very much holdings in the Southwest.
New York City gas price, what is that sign says $4.99?
$4.99, yeah.
$5 a gas in New York City, $5 a gallon. And it's set to go even higher. Summer travel plunges due to higher prices. And, of course, when the price of gas goes up, the price of everything goes up because almost everything is transported by truck, and trucks burn gasoline.
Yep, and they surcharge everything whenever the price of gas goes up.
Mm-hmm. Amazon pushes facial recognition to police, prompting outcry over surveillance. Well, this is what China is doing already, of course. Mm-hmm. They can track all of their people, their 1 billion people they have, especially in the cities. Apple teasing smarter Siri with new voice. That'll make it better, I'm sure. A pro-ISIS propaganda finds fertile ground on Google. Hoax Walmart kidnapping staged to make social media splash. Some people will do anything to get famous. Landmark lawsuit claims Monsanto hid cancer danger of weed killer for decades. Yes.
Yeah, we need a big class action against Monsanto.
Rattlesnake plunges from tree into kayak and then starts attacking.
Oh my goodness.
Drudge in his animal stories again. 40% of Americans can't cover $400 emergency expense. House overwhelmingly passes bipartisan prison reform bill, but apparently it has a problem in the Senate because not that people in the Senate don't like prison reform, they want sentencing reform. So we have two things here: how to treat people who are already in prison and how to treat people who are about to go to prison. And people in the Senate want to combine the two. And so this bill may, a lot of things are going to happen in the Senate with regarding this bill. But Jared Kushner apparently was behind this because his father was in prison, and based on the way that his father was treated in prison, he wanted to get this done apparently. Billionaire Bloomberg raising taxes on poor people is a good thing. Okay. Spoken
like a billionaire Democrat.
Yes. World faces staggering obesity challenge. Learning to nap in New York, a city that never sleeps. Vanity Fair hit with more layoffs, hard truth as newspapers. Hedge funds in charge, yeah. This is why, in the Cheonryuk Constitution, a hedge fund would not be able to own a newspaper because all the stock has to be owned by individual citizens in the Cheonryuk Constitution. AP subpoenaed over hacked emails, setting up legal showdown. And in Hawaii, that volcano that's erupting, the lava is now nearing their power plant, the geothermal power plant. Father of accused Texas killer blames bullying for rampage. I blame the father, actually. Lock up your guns, will you? If your kid is running around in a trench coat in 90-degree heat with reverse pentagrams and Nazi and the communist symbols on them, for crying out loud, lock up your guns.
Now, this word bullying is a kind of a frightening word in my mind because it means more censorship. It's going to that's going to lead to more clamping down on hate speech and all sorts of things. So I think this is ultimately going to be stifling.
Well, a better way would be to teach children how to deal with bullying.
Yeah.
Through jiu-jitsu.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Peace
Brazilian
police
jiu-jitsu.
in the schools.
Yes. By the way, the Washington Post article this morning corrected one misspelling. They misspelled haranim, and they corrected that, I see this morning. But they did not correct their misspelling of jiu-jitsu. And the reason is, I think, because they took the Japanese spelling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because by the Japanese romanization, J-U, J-I-T-S-U is correct. That's the way the Japanese romanize it. But Brazilian jiu-jitsu has a different Brazilian spelling. So if you're talking about Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and apparently I learned this a few days ago, even within Brazilian jiu-jitsu, there are two different spellings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there's one branch that spells it J-I-U, and then there's another branch that spells it, I think, J-U-I or something like that. Anyway, it's different. So it depends on which branch of Brazilian jiu-jitsu you're in. But anyway, the King's branch is J-I-U. So that's the way we spell it, and that's the way the Washington Post should have spelled it, if they were talking about Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Yeah, if they were talking about something Japanese, then J-U would be correct. But anyway, they haven't corrected that yet. Anyway, let's see, where were we? I nitpick these things. I'm sorry. There are other things that could be nitpicked in that article. But anyway, all around, it was a good article. USA moves to shutter all Iran nuke sites. Okay. Turkey lira in free fall, eyes on central bank. And what was it, last Saturday, I think I showed a video from by this man whose name we don't know, Monaco 64. He talked about the scourge of central banking, and he talked about how, he talked about the history, about how the first central bank in England came about when William of Orange was brought over from Holland to become king of England, and central banking was already in practice there. This was in the 17th century, and so then the Bank of England was chartered soon after that. And that's basically the origin of central banking in England, but he went through and about how this is a tool of oppression. Central banking is a tool of oppression. He says we don't need central banks to tell us how to act and how much to charge on interest, for example, or we don't need central banks to do this. And I showed that video because a lot of people have trouble understanding why the Cheonryuk Constitution outlaws central banks. And that's the reason. If you're going to, central banks represent a concentration, a centralization of power. And in every aspect, the Cheonryuk Constitution seeks to decentralize power. This is, I think, one point that the Washington Post reporter missed. He called it a powerful document, and that's good, but he just focused on the point that he says it takes our country, puts it in reverse, and steps on the gas. So, which is a good thing, by the way. It takes us back to the founding spirit of America, which is what Father said we should do. And so, the Washington Post reporter testifies that we are doing what Father wanted to do. But what he missed was that this Constitution represents a radical decentralization of power, including the aspect of not having a central bank. Anyway, Monaco 64, you can go to that YouTube channel and you can watch that video yourself. Anyway, so eyes on central bank, yeah. Central banks cause problems more than they solve them, and in fact, much more than they solve them, yeah. Cops, here another animal story. A man beat his dog, or beat a dog, because it ate his whopper. Yeah, well, okay, yeah, I can see that. Greg, though, is saying, is the dog still alive? Greg is worried for the dog. Not because it was beaten, but because it ate the whopper. Hollywood hopes for a rebound with slew of...
Well, you know, there's an obesity crisis among pets.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
I mean, there was another article about obesity crisis among humans, but actually, because pets are cared for by humans, they're given human diet, and therefore pets are now obese. So that's a serious problem.
Okay.
So this was probably an obese dog that ate the whopper.
Hollywood hopes for a rebound with a slew of summer blockbusters. Inside Solo's Nightmare Productions, studio films with LGBT characters drop too low. Yay! Superstitions stopping Ebola victims from seeking medical care. This has been true in the past, too. The patients escaped quarantine in a city of 350,000 people. Yeah. Results, fighter pilot upsets establishment in Kentucky. Not sure is this about a horse race or is this about a fighter aircraft? I'm not sure.
I think he's a politician, and he won a political race.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see. He won a race. Okay. Whenever you're talking about Kentucky, you never know. Fighter pilot could be the name of a racehorse, you know. You never know. In Kentucky, fighter pilot Amy McGrath wins Kentucky primary. Okay, sure enough. Yeah, all right. It is a politician. Okay, thank you. Poll, Gavin Newsom jumps to big lead in California race. I believe that's the governor's race, isn't it? Stacey Abrams wins Georgia governor primary, making history. Republican candidate behind deportation bus loses. Three ways Pelosi won't be speaker next year. Well, that's good. Magazine, is the Saudi crown prince dead or sidelined? Yeah, we haven't heard from him in a while. And boom, banks report a record profit. Bust. Atlantic City casinos down 12%. Inflation fears grow. And the exodus out of Illinois continues.
I wonder why.
Wonder why. Well, there are several reasons.
Yeah.
Taxes
bankrupt.
Bankrupt, and they're raising taxes to cover their bankruptcy.
And they're confiscating guns.
Confiscating guns. Yeah, there are all sorts of reasons for leaving Illinois. Court, parents have right to force 30-year-old son to move out.
Forced eviction of your son.
But again, I put the blame on the parents.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It should never get to that point.
Why do you have to rely on the courts to get your son out?
Right.
And why did you have to, until he's 30, what is he doing, playing video games since he graduated from high school? Could be. Catholic Church's looming fight over same-sex blessings. Yeah, maybe this is a judgment, on the Catholic Church, dividing the church over this issue. And contrary to what maybe many people say, God divides.
Yes,
all right?
All the time.
God divides all the time. You remember the sheep and the goats, the wheat and the chaff,
Yep.
God divides, all right? Okay, no.
It's happening.
No. God hates division. God hates division. God divides.
It's happening with the second king right now.
Yes.
Who's going to be faithful to Father?
Yes.
Who's going to be faithful to, Father's anointing?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Catholic Church's looming fight over same-sex blessings. I hope that many good people can come out of that satanic institution that is the Catholic Church. That is what the Catholic Church has become. Dolce & Gabbana celebrate politically incorrect opinions, love to be free, love to say what you think. Scientists plan DNA hunt for Loch Ness Monster. I guess the question that comes is why. But anyways, people get paid to do this. Holy Grail, 300-year-old ship contains $17 billion treasure?
Wow.
Question mark. All right. So, yeah, people can invest in that if they like. Yeah. All right. Let's look at this American suffering brain injury. This just came up on the Drudge maybe in the last hour or two. This sound incident, this is worrying. The U.S. Embassy in China issued a health alert on Wednesday after a U.S. government employee experienced an abnormal sound and suffered a mild brain injury, an incident reminiscent of a mysterious illness that hit diplomats in Cuba. Why is it only government employees that are getting hit by this? The U.S. and Chinese authorities are investigating the matter after the employee who was assigned to the southern city of Guangzhou was diagnosed with mild traumatic brain injury, said embassy spokesman Jenny Lee. In an alert email to U.S. citizens in China, the embassy said it does not know what caused the symptoms or of any similar situations in the country. In Cuba last year, U.S. disclosed that 24 diplomats and their family members had fallen victim to an unsolved mysterious attack that left them with injuries resembling brain trauma. 10 Canadian diplomats and their relatives who also suffered a strange illness. We cannot at this time connect it with what happened in Havana, but we are investigating all possibilities, a U.S. embassy official in Beijing told AFP on the condition of anonymity. The embassy's health alert says the government employee recently reported subtle and vague but abnormal sensations of sound and pressure. I don't know. It sounds like maybe someone's trying to make an excuse of why they didn't do their work. Frankly, I would investigate that as well. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. If the guy is really did suffering, I apologize in advance. But sounds to me like that might be one avenue of investigation. The U.S. government is taking these reports seriously and has informed its official staff in China of this event. Why didn't you do this report? Well, I heard this strange sound yesterday, and it damaged my brain.
Yeah, you might be able to get some kind of compensation for such a thing.
There you go. While in China, if you experienced any unusual acute auditory or sensory phenomena, I think in China you're going to experience a lot of unusual acute auditory and sensory phenomena. But anyway, accompanied by unusual sounds or piercing noises, do not attempt to locate their source. Instead, move to a location where the sounds are not present, it says, urging people with medical problems to consult a doctor. Lee said the employee experienced a variety of physical symptoms between late 2017 through April 2018. The person was sent to the United States and diagnosed with MTBI on May 18th. I say, okay, I apologize. He was already diagnosed with this MTBI. The State Department is taking this incident very seriously and is working to determine the cause and impact of the incident. The Chinese government has assured us they are also investigating and taking appropriate measures. In Cuba, the American victims had associated the onset of their symptoms with unusual sounds or auditory sensations, a State Department physician told the U.S. Senate in January. Charles Rosenfarb, a doctor and director of the State Department Bureau of Medical Services, said the symptoms were mixed but consistent with brain trauma. Now, this is a very worrying thing. It sounds like, if this is all confirmed, it sounds like some sort of new weapon is being developed.
A sonic weapon.
Sonic weapon, yes, is being developed, and especially we guess by the communists, although we don't know.
Because a lot of these sounds, this weaponry cannot be heard with the normal ear.
Mm-hmm.
It happens something on another frequency.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess that's a good reason maybe to stay out of China and Cuba. I don't know where else it could happen pretty soon, though. Okay. Let's look at this landmark suit against Monsanto. This is in the Guardian newspaper in the UK. In June, a California groundskeeper will make history by taking company to trial on claims it suppressed harm of Roundup. Yeah. So is Roundup still in the market?
Yeah.
Yep. Did they change the formula?
I'm not exactly sure. I think it still has the same name and everything. It's still being sold at Lowe's and Home Depot and all those places.
At the age of 46, Dwayne Johnson is not ready to die, but with cancer spread throughout most of his body, doctors say he probably has just months to live. Now Johnson, a husband and father of 3 in California, hopes to survive long enough to make Monsanto take the blame for his fate. On 18 June, Johnson will become the first person to take the global seed and chemical company to trial on allegations that it has spent decades hiding the cancer-causing dangers of its popular Roundup herbicide products. In this case, has just received a major boost. I see. So they still haven't admitted that this causes cancer, I guess. And that's what the trial is about.
If they admit it, then they would have to take it off the market.
Right, yeah.
You can't continue to sell such a thing.
Last week, Judge Curtis Carnell issued an order clearing the way for jurors to consider not just scientific evidence related to what caused Johnson's cancer, but allegations that Monsanto suppressed evidence of the risks of its weed-killing products. Carnell ruled that the trial will proceed and the jury would be allowed to consider possible punitive damages. The internal correspondence noted by Johnson could support a jury finding that Monsanto has long been aware of the risk of its glyphosate-based herbicides are carcinogenic, but has continuously sought to influence the scientific literature to prevent its internal concerns from reaching the public sphere and to bolster its defenses and products liability actions, Carnell wrote. Thus, there are triable issues of material fact. Johnson's case, filed in San Francisco County Superior Court in California, is at the forefront of a legal fight against Monsanto. Some 4,000 plaintiffs have sued Monsanto, alleging exposure to Roundup caused them or their loved ones to develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Another case is scheduled for trial in October in Monsanto's hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. The lawsuits challenge Monsanto's position that its herbicides are proven safe and assert that the company has known about the dangers and hidden them from regulators and the public. The litigants cite an assortment of research studies indicating that the active ingredient in Monsanto's herbicides, a chemical called glyphosate, can lead to NHL, that's non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and other ailments. They also cite research showing glyphosate formulations in its commercial end products are more toxic than glyphosate alone. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classified glyphosate as a probable human carcinogen in 2015. Monsanto championed falsified data and attacked legitimate studies that revealed dangers of its herbicides and led a prolonged campaign of misinformation to convince government agencies, farmers, and consumers that Roundup was safe, according to Johnson's lawsuit. We look forward to exposing how Monsanto hid the risk of cancer and polluted the science, said Michael Miller, Johnson's attorney. Monsanto does not want the truth about Roundup and cancer to become public. Monsanto has fiercely denied the allegations, saying its products are not the cause of cancer. The IARC finding was wrong, according to Monsanto, as are studies finding glyphosate and glyphosate-based herbicides like Roundup to be potentially carcinogenic. Monsanto points to findings by the Environmental Protection Agency,
you can always trust
which we can always trust.
Always trust
yes.
that. Yeah.
And how many of the people there used to work for Monsanto,
exactly.
I wonder? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's a revolving door.
It's a revolving door. And other regulatory authorities as backing its defense. Glyphosate-based herbicides are supported by one of the most extensive worldwide human health and environmental effects databases ever compiled for a pesticide product, Monsanto states on its website. Comprehensive toxicological and environmental fate studies conducted over the last 40 years have time and again demonstrated the strong safety profile of this widely used herbicide. The company spokesman did not respond to a request for additional comment. How the Johnson lawsuit plays out could be a bellwether for how other plaintiffs proceed. If Johnson prevails, there could be many more years of costly litigation and hefty damages claims. If Monsanto successfully turns back the challenge, it could derail other cases and lift pressure on the firm. According to the court record, Johnson had a job as a groundskeeper for the Benicia Unified School District, where he applied numerous treatments of Monsanto's herbicides to school properties from 2012 until at least late 2015. He was healthy and active before he got the cancer diagnosis in August 2014. In a Johnson deposition, Johnson's January deposition, Johnson's treating physician testified that more than 80% of his body was covered by lesions. Oof. And that he probably had but a few months to live. Johnson has improved since starting a new drug treatment in November, but remains too weak sometimes to even speak or get out of bed, his attorneys and doctors state in court filings. Monsanto's lawyers plan to introduce evidence that other factors caused Johnson's cancer to challenge the validity of the science Johnson's claims rely on, and to present their own experts on research supporting safety. The company has an EPA draft risk assessment of glyphosate on its side, which concludes that glyphosate is not likely carcinogenic.
It's really tough. Monsanto is so intertwined with government agencies that it's really hard to bring down this Goliath.
And this is an example of how big government and big business collude
together, yeah.
Collude together. You have this revolving door. I don't know. I wonder if we can do a quick study, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of people in EPA.
Part of the problem
we
is
used to work for Monsanto.
Our fixation against weeds.
That's another thing. Yes,
it's another issue.
A yellow flower is on my lawn.
Right, and it's this. It's a form of idolatry almost, like how good you can make your lawn look. Right. And really, I think that's something to. This is something where you put this stuff on your lawn, and then your kids go out and run barefoot on the lawn. They take in these toxins through their skin, and your pets take in these toxins through the skin. So it's one more reason why cancer is spiking upward.
I have a related article here on the Huffington Post. This is August of 2017. This article is, it says, collusion or coincidence. Records show EPA efforts to slow herbicide review came in coordination with Monsanto. Dun, 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 dun. Newly released government email communications show a persistent effort by multiple officials within the Environmental Protection Agency to slow a separate federal agency's safety review of Monsanto's top-selling herbicide, which I guess is Roundup.
Roundup, yeah.
Notably, the records demonstrate that the EPA efforts came at the behest of Monsanto, and that EPA officials were helpful enough to keep the chemical giant updated on their progress. See, this is big government, big business colluding. Yeah? The communications, most of which were obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests, show that it was early 2015 when the EPA and Monsanto began working in concert to stall a toxicology review that a unit tied to the Cancer Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was conducting on glyphosate. They say here. The other one was glyphosate, right? What is the difference between glyphosate and glyphosate? Anyway, Huffington Post says glyphosate. Glyphosate, a key ingredient in Monsanto's branded Roundup herbicide products. The details revealed in the documents come as Monsanto is defending itself against lawsuits alleging that it has tried to cover up evidence of harm with its herbicides. Okay, wow. The Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, a federal public health agency that, along with CDC, is part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, is charged with evaluating the potential adverse human effects from exposures to hazardous substances in the environment. So it made sense for the ATSDR to take a look at glyphosate, which is widely used on U.S. farms, residential lawns and gardens, school playgrounds, and golf courses. Glyphosate is widely used in food production, and glyphosate residues have been found in testing of human urine. The ATSDR announced in February 2015 that it planned to publish a toxicological profile of glyphosate by October of that year, but by October that review was on hold. And to this date, no such review has yet been published. The documents reveal this was no accident, no bureaucracy delay, but rather was the result of a collaborative effort between Monsanto and a group of high-ranking EPA officials. For Monsanto, the timing of the ATSDR review was worrisome. In March 2015, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer, that's the IARC, had declared glyphosate to be a probable human carcinogen, and Monsanto feared ATSDR might have similar concerns about the chemical. Previous reports have described how one EPA official, Jess Rowland, communicated to Monsanto in April 2015 his willingness to try to kill the ATSDR review. Rowland, who retired in 2016, was the deputy division director within the Health Effects Division of the EPA's Office of Pesticide Programs. Allegations of collusion between Rowland and Monsanto have prompted a probe by the EPA's Office of Inspector General. But the trove of documents newly obtained from within EPA and HHS demonstrate that the assistance to Monsanto came not only from Rowland, but also from even higher-level EPA officials. Rather than encourage and assist the toxicology review of glyphosate, Monsanto and EPA officials repeatedly complained to ATSDR and HHS that such a review was unnecessarily duplicative and should take a back seat to an EPA review also underway. The following timeline shows how the events unfolded. So anyway, they have a timeline there.
So the EPA is giving a free pass to Monsanto.
Right. So the EPA still has yet to issue the overall new risk assessment. It said that it would be out by 2015. This was in August of this article was written in August of 2017. The agency has offered ever-changing timeliness for the assessment, but now says it intends to release a draft risk assessment sometime this year. That will be followed by a 60-day public comment period. After the public comment period, EPA will determine whether any risk management is needed. In the meantime, Monsanto has cited the EPA's backing of glyphosate safety as a repudiation of the IARC finding both in court and with regulators in Europe, which are looking at glyphosate safety issues. So I wonder if this has been issued. Glyphosate EPA risk assessment. Has it been issued?
I think so.
Has it been issued? Oh, okay, yes. It was issued in December of 2017.
December 2017.
Yeah, it was issued, yes. So then I guess there was a 60-day period, and then, here we go. Public comment period open for a glyphosate draft assessment. That began in March. This is a EPA news release released on March 2, 2018. EPA has opened the 60-day public comment period. Comments are due by April 30th, 2018. So that was the end of last month. The draft risk assessments and supporting documents are available in glyphosate's registration review. All right, so I guess now the public comment period, I guess, has ended. So now they have to decide whether or not to do anything about it. That'll take another 10 years. So, okay. Okay, but here, there's another article here. Flawed EPA analysis rejects finding that glyphosate is a probable carcinogen. Okay. U.S. EPA says glyphosate is not likely to be carcinogenic to people. Right. So EPA is giving Monsanto a pass. And that is why in the Chunuk Constitution there is no EPA on the federal level. On the federal level, all right? So states can do what they want, but at least on the federal level there will be no environmental protection agency. Yeah.
And this is the kind of where government becomes the biggest polluters.
Yes.
That it's really not small businesses; it's really government colluding with large monopoly-type businesses that this kind of thing can happen. And even when there's public outcry, like in Cheonggyeoguk, the free market would determine much of environmental restrictions that occurs on a local level. In this situation, the local people cannot even say anything. They can't even fight against such a large. They have such a huge legal team, Monsanto. And it's very difficult to mount, some kind of an offensive against this polluter. Because it goes into the running water. It goes into our drinking water. It goes into our,
And it says that even
entire food supply.
traces have been found in human urine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's a serious thing, and it affects the microbial health of soil. You know, because it not only kills insects, but it kills all the
Well, it's supposed
microbial
to,
life.
It's
in
supposed to kill
soil.
weeds, right? The dandelions and such.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it kills a lot more than just what it's supposed to kill.
Yeah.
And by the way, do we have weeds? Is that a valid concept?
It's just people have determined certain plant life to be undesirable. But a lot of weeds are edible.
They are,
and,
yes.
very healthy. Dandelions being one of them.
Dandelions being one of them, yes. Yes. And yes, we seem to have a large crop of those again this year already.
Go out and eat your dandelions.
Go out and eat your dandelions, yes. Okay. All right. Maybe that's enough for the Monsanto situation. But yeah, if you're using Roundup, maybe not such a good idea, huh? Maybe stay away from Roundup.
Yeah, because it does, your children, when they walk on grass that's been treated with Roundup, also, it becomes on their clothes, it gets on their skin. It should be a real top health concern.
Do you have any recommendation how to, I don't want to say weed, but how to manage undesirable vegetation?
Wood chips are really good.
Wood chips?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that covers up the grass, though.
Yeah. Well, it covers up the area where you don't want weeds.
I see.
For example, like in a garden situation.
I see.
Yeah, wood chips are a good way to replenish the soil with minerals and all sorts of good compounds, and it represses weed growth. That would be one in a garden situation. Don't be so picky about a perfect lawn. You know, grow food instead of grass. That's be my suggestion.
Yes.
Because you never know when you might need more food. And it's better to grow your own food. Don't rely so much on the grocery store. Grow your own food.
And dandelions are among that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We add dandelions all the time to our salads.
Let's look at another article just came up on Drudge again very recently. Kids 13 and 14 allegedly kill a woman for phone and video game. Let's see if we can learn any lessons about self-defense from this. See, a phone and a video game device, that's what two teenagers were allegedly after in a burglary that turned into a murder, according to the Fort Worth police. Officials with the department said in a statement released Tuesday that the two boys, aged 13 and 14, were arrested on a capital murder charge in the fatal shooting of a woman in her Fort Worth apartment. Officials withheld the suspects' names. According to the report, the victim, Yesenia Gutierrez, was home with her 3-year-old son Friday, May 18th, around noon, when the break-in happened at the Manitoba Apartments in Fort Worth. The woman was later discovered in a pool of blood by her husband, Carlos Landa, after he arrived at the scene. According to the police report, Landa said he was at work when he received a text message from his wife at approximately 11:05 a.m. He said the message asked him to answer his phone. Police said Landa responded to the text message asking what was wrong. When Gutierrez did not respond, Landa became concerned and left work early to head to her apartment. When Landa arrived, police said he saw the apartment door kicked in and his bleeding wife on the floor. Police said he tried to help his wife and was covered in her blood when they arrived. The 3-year-old boy was not injured. Members of the Gutierrez family said she fought to keep the burglars out of the room where her son was. Fort Worth police later located the suspects after reviewing surveillance video from the area, talking to other residents, and coordinating with members of the department's robbery and gangs unit. According to the statement, officers subsequently detained the unnamed adult who ultimately led them to a possible weapon used in the attack, and also to the two suspects. According to the police report, the suspects appeared to blame each other for the fatal shot. Investigators said they located suspect one of the juveniles, at about 6 p.m. Suspect one claimed he was a 300 Crip Mafia gang member. He said that he kicked in the door and demanded Gutierrez's phone. He said the lady willingly handed over her phone, and he walked outside to wait on the other suspect. Police said They located suspect 2 the next day. So I don't get this. If they took her phone, why was she texting her husband? How was she texting her husband? I don't understand that.
Well, she might have sent the text before she handed over the phone.
I see.
But why did they attack her if she gave over her phone?
So this is what suspect 1 is saying. He says, all I did was take the phone. Then I went out, and I don't know what happened after that is what he's saying.
I see.
And so he's blaming suspect 2. Suspect 2 located him the next day. Suspect 2 says that he and suspect 1 looked in the windows of the victim's apartment and observed a video gaming device. He told officers they thought it would be an easy lick. Suspect 2 told police that suspect 1 allegedly kicked in the door and that suspect 1 demanded the woman's phone. He also says suspect 1 allegedly shot the woman in the back of the head after she turned away from him. That all according to the police department. But the mother, of course, said her son never entered the building. Okay, never. Okay, so anyway, the 2 came along, it looks like, and maybe they looked in through the window, and they saw what they thought would be what they call an easy lick. I guess this is the first floor apartment. And it looks like the woman did not have the tools to defend herself. Or at least if she did, she didn't have the tools on her when she opened the door. So opening the door was without knowing who was there. You know, if you look through the little hole, maybe you could see that
looks like they kicked
in
the door.
Kicked in the door. They kicked in the door. I see. So securing the door not securing the door was a mistake as well. Where, you know, I think we've learned that you can replace the screws in the door latch to make it much more difficult to kick in the door. Yeah. And use a 2-inch screws, I think someone was saying, that makes it much more secure, especially if you're in a first floor apartment. But also having the tools on you to defend yourself and your family is very important. So home carry is what the King has been emphasizing for us, and it looks like that was not being done here when the guys came in. Of course, they would have come in with the gun out, and so it may have been difficult to, well, I don't know. It depends on where the woman was, where the mother was, and everything like that, whether she could have drawn her firearm in that situation. But anyway, it's bad things happen.
Sad situation.
Yes, bad things happen. All right. Let's look at this prison reform bill. I'm interested in this because the United States has the highest per capita prison population of any country in the world. And that's a sign for many people are there for nonviolent crimes. That's one thing. That's one reason. So sentencing reform is also necessary. And some people in the Senate are griping about this because it says it doesn't go far enough on sentencing reform. Whereas people in the House are saying, okay, well, that's another thing. We can handle that separately. Let's see what's going on, though. The House, by an overwhelming 360 to 59 vote, passed a bipartisan reform bill Tuesday that provides more education for federal prisoners and gives them a second chance after their release. Authored by Representative Hakeem Jeffries and Doug Collins, the First Step Act would authorize $250 million over 5 years to develop and expand programs that reduce recidivism and give incentives for good behavior. $250 million is what? That's basically nothing for the government. The bill would also boost, there we go, Post wants me to subscribe. Bill would also boost current inmates' chances for a GED, vocational and college courses, as well as substance abuse and mental health help, Jeffries told lawmakers on the House floor. These are individuals who are in the system right now without hope, without opportunity, without a meaningful chance at transforming themselves, Jeffries said, and the First Step Act will provide that. Why would we possibly refuse that? The chief opponent of the bill, Representative Gerald Nadler, a Democrat of Manhattan, said the legislation fails to reform sentencing guidelines and could even exacerbate racial biases when prison officials conduct a risk assessment for each offender.
So I guess the people opposed to this felt it didn't go far enough.
Right, yeah. And that it exacerbates racial biases. Not sure how that happens, but on principle, I cannot support legislation which fails to address the larger issues of sentencing reform, said Nadler, the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. Though this bill makes some modest improvements in areas related to our prisons, it actually does more harm by cementing into our system new areas of racial biases and disadvantage that makes worse a criminal justice system desperately in need of reform. The bill earned diverse support from conservative groups like Charles Koch Institute and the Faith and Freedom Coalition, as well as progressive leaders like commentator Van Jones and his Dream Corps #Cut50 initiative, but the ACLU and NAACP Legal Defense Fund and Education Fund opposed the bill, arguing it doesn't go far enough. Okay, so anyway, this legislation is priority for the White House thanks to the advocacy of Jared Kushner, who saw how his father, Charles, was treated in federal prison. The president's son-in-law worked closely with the bill's authors and helped host a prison reform summit at the White House last week with President Trump. So anyway, it's going to hit some hurdles in the Senate. But we know that 90% of all prisoners within the Bureau of Prisons will be released someday. I guess if they don't die, they will be released, right? Said Representative Bob Goodlatte, a Republican of Virginia, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. This is an indisputable fact. We also know that without programming and intervention which can train prisoners to be better citizens, not better criminals, prisoners are more likely to recidivate. Okay. We are hopeful that with the business community's belief in second chances and reforms to our prison system, the U.S. will see a reduction in the recidivism rate through the removal of these barriers to opportunity. Yeah. Well, prison reform is certainly a very important thing, and sentencing reform is perhaps a larger issue. I can see that, but I guess you can't do everything at once. I guess that's what the House is saying, what the White House is saying, I guess too. But people in the Senate, I want this to be an opportunity to address the larger reform, especially with the nonviolent offenses. For example, gun offenses. There are plenty of cases where people are jailed in relation to a gun. Somehow, the presence of a firearm. For example, driving into New Jersey from Pennsylvania with your firearm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That won't be federal prison. That'll be probably state prison, but you can get a long
5 years,
at least 5 years, minimum 5 years, yeah. Right? Sentence there in New Jersey.
Seems like if you mistakenly go into New Jersey, you have your Pennsylvania conceal and carry, that the cop would just say, "Okay, quickly go back to Pennsylvania," rather than hauling you off to prison. Doesn't that make sense? I mean,
it would, yes, but that's not how the New Jersey police are trained.
No.
If they see a gun, or if they see a firearm, they get all excited. And, we're Pennsylvania police, state police. They don't get excited. Oh, you have a firearm? Okay, well.
Right.
You don't touch yours, I don't touch mine.
And you wonder how much money has a role in all of this. Like, cops do have quotas they have to hit. They have to make payroll. So I mean, we all understand that with speed traps, but you wonder about all the other arrests that happen. There's a money trail involved in every arrest.
I was working in the recent election with a man whose wife is a police officer. And she came by and brought him lunch and stuff like that. And, she's a police officer, I think, in that particular town. And after she was gone, he started bragging about her. He says, "My wife, she wrote $30,000 worth of tickets last year."
Right.
And this is a small town.
Yeah.
A very small town. $30,000 worth of tickets by one officer. in 1 year is quite a lot,
You
actually.
get promoted for doing that kind
I
of
was
stuff.
very careful how I drove out of that town. Yeah. Oh, boy. So anyway, and I think she got some kind of reward for it, too.
Yeah.
Anyway, her husband was very, very proud of her for that. He was a retired police officer. Let's look at this report on the Saudi Crown Prince. He was doing a lot for a while. Then, wow. Now,
Sidelined?
well, the headline is, are reports of Mohammed bin Salman's death greatly exaggerated? Has Saudi Arabia Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman been assassinated, had a breakdown, or gone into hiding? Or is it just that wild internet conjecture? This is The Spectator magazine. I've heard a lot about this magazine. It's not I think it's a reputable magazine. I ask only because he has barely been seen in public since prolonged heavy gunfire was heard at the Royal Palace in Riyadh in the middle of the night on April 21. Okay. Well, I hadn't heard about this anyplace else. At the time, Saudi state media dismissed reports on Twitter and elsewhere that the shots were the sound of a coup taking place, insisting instead the semi-automatic gunfire was merely aimed at a recreational drone that had flown too close to the palace walls. In this age of fake news and heavy Arab media censorship, it's hard to know who to trust. Well, that's also always true. It's always hard to know who to trust. I mean, it's not just, not just in the recently. But what seems certain is that the Crown Prince, previously ubiquitous as the international focal point of a cultural revolution in the kingdom, seems suddenly to have vanished. Social media is ablaze with rumors of the young ruler's murder. Users are sharing reports of a supposedly secret intelligence dossier that states MBS, as the Crown Prince is known, has been shot twice. The editor-in-chief of Tehran-based daily Kayhan, again, Tehran is the capital of Iran. Iran hates Saudi Arabia's guts. So here we know we cannot trust this. This is, it's not hard to know. Okay. It must, to be an impartial source for, unlikely it must be said to be an impartial source for Saudi news coverage. There you go, see. Has written in an editorial, at least 2 bullets have hit bin Salman in April 21, clashes in Riyadh, and it is even possible that he is dead. Well, it's possible that anyone's dead. According to a well-placed source at the British Foreign Office, however, the Crown Prince is alive and well. He was also photographed at the opening of the Qiddiya Project, Saudi Arabia's biggest cultural, sports, and entertainment site on April 28th. So the story must be Iranian fake news, mustn't it? Perhaps to head off talk of assassination, a palace courtier has released a photo of MBS socializing with King Hamad of Bahrain, President Sisi of Egypt, and Abu Dhabi ruler Mohammed bin Zayed. Of course, oh look, but he's wearing a hat, so you can't really see him. But that picture seems a strange way to convince the world MBS is fighting fit. It certainly looks like the man himself, even if a cap is obscuring his eyes. That's what I mean. Yeah, see? That's not the... why is he... Yeah, it could be a double, yeah. And these dictators, they use doubles a lot. But it's impossible to verify when the photo of the 4 men standing by a swimming pool was taken, when it was taken. Surely, given the gravity of the claims, MBS should have recorded a statement by now. Is he in hiding or incapacitated? Interesting, when Mike Pompeo visited Saudi Arabia in late April, no photos or video footage of MBS with the U.S. Secretary of State were seen. The State Department did not confirm that a scheduled working dinner with the Secretary Pompeo and MBS had in fact taken place, or that the 2 men had seen each other in Riyadh.
Yeah, usually photos would accompany such a visit.
And they won't even tell us whether this dinner actually took place. Very suspicious.
Very odd, yeah.
Very odd. The schedule would have been changed if they had not met, said a spokesperson, somewhat opaquely. The meeting was closed to press. Again, this is odd given the blazing publicity around MBS over the last year. Has he been sidelined by his elders in the Saudi ruling family? Whatever has happened to him, MBS is certainly not short of enemies at home. After becoming the nation's de facto ruler in June 2017, The 32-year-old rounded up 380 or so Saudis' richest men in what was billed as a corruption purge. There was unconfirmed reports of torture until the powerful detained men agreed to sign over to the state large portions of their wealth. MBS has also not shied away from the angering powerful Wahhabi clerics as he has sought to begin modernizing the kingdom. He has lifted a ban on women driving, for example, and more shockingly for Saudi conservatives, allowed relations with the long-hated Israel to start to thaw almost publicly. Well, recently we've heard about how feminists, or so-called feminists, in Saudi Arabia, believing that women are just as valuable as men and other such revolutionary thoughts, have been detained. So that would seem also to point to something has changed in Saudi Arabia. Abroad, Iran and other powerful Shia forces throughout the region would rejoice at news of Crown Prince's death. But, this could be one. Okay, I understand what's going on here now. I was a victim to one of these things once, and so that's why I understand. What's happening, I think, is that Iran is putting out these stories because they don't know what has happened, what MBS is doing, and they want to put out enough of these stories that he is forced to come above water or come out, whatever he's doing.
Draw him out.
Or draw out information. If he is dead, draw out that information.
Right.
Yeah.
He was a very public figure up until recently.
Yes.
He was photographed all
constantly.
over the place.
Yes. Yeah.
He was like the rising star in the Middle East.
And maybe, he's, as a strategic move, maybe he's staying hidden. And maybe that's why, he met Pompeo and said, okay, I'm meeting you, but don't confirm to anybody that we had actually met, all right, or something like that. I'm pretending to be dead, or I'm making people think that I might be dead, and I want that to continue for a while, because otherwise people might actually kill me. So that's possible too. Abroad, Iran and other powerful Shia forces throughout the region would rejoice at the news of the Crown Prince's death. Tensions in the Middle East are running particularly high at the moment, thanks in no part to the apparent closeness of MBS to President Trump's White House. It could be, of course, that MBS, exhausted after a whistle-top media tour of Europe and the United States, is actually holed up on a luxury yacht on a long holiday. But it does seem strange. That's possible, yeah. It does seem strange that his retreat from public view appears to have come soon after the sound of heavy gunfire at the palace. Well, they may have, that may be part of the show. I mean, they may have fired off a few shots, to make people think that there's a coup going on. Okay, here we go. Update. Following the publication of this article, the Saudi royal family yesterday permitted the distribution of a photograph of the Crown Prince at a cabinet meeting in Jeddah, looking in rude health. I don't know, what is rude health? That must be a British thing. All's well that ends well. Then let's go to this.
May 22nd.
That's
yesterday's photo. But we have no idea when that picture was taken.
Yeah. Again, we don't know when this was taken. So what we do know is they're trying to make it look like he's alive. Whether he is actually alive or not is still open to some discussion, I guess. I mean, how is this photo any different from one that would have been taken in January or February or March?
Yeah, there's nothing indicating the date or the type of meeting it is.
Hold up a newspaper with the headline, all right? Then we can say, maybe that was photoshopped. But
right.
Let him come to America. Come on, you guys. Anyway, we have fun speculating. But, yeah, his disappearance would be a big change in the Middle East situation, because it would mean that someone else would become crown prince. And this may be what's happening. Maybe this is another thing that dictatorships do. They hide the death of an important figure until a replacement can be found, because if you publicize it too quickly, then that exacerbates the power struggle. And maybe not right now. There's a power struggle going on in Saudi Arabia, deciding who's going to become the new crown prince, because there are a lot of candidates there.
Well, he was quite radical. He was doing a lot of things very quickly.
Yep. So he may have been too radical, too quick for his own good. We don't know. But I imagine that the truth will come out soon. That usually.
And what's behind the rising gasoline prices, Tim? Give us your analysis. Since talking of Saudi Arabia here.
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows why all of a sudden the gas prices are spiking.
Let's see if Google knows. Why are gas
Everybody
prices
wants to
going
know.
up? Why are gas prices going up? Let's see what Google says. Yes, prices at the pump are going up. Thank you, Google. But these everyday behaviors are also costing you money. Drivers are prone to overpay by at least 20 cents per gallon due to factors such as laziness and procrastination, according to a report from... So it's my fault? My fault?
Come on,
There
get
you
your
go.
act together.
According to Gas Buddy, a website and app that helps consumers find the best gas prices. Listen. There you go. Why is it that the left recently is so eager to blame the victim? Huh? I mean, they used to say, don't blame the victim. Now they're blaming the victim all over the place. When was this written? May 1, 2019. Okay, well. Yeah, so anyway, Google doesn't really know either. They're saying it's your fault and my fault. Well, one thing I guess is because they're saying it's because Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. And so, there may be a boycott of the United States. Iran may not want to export to the United States or something like that, or may cut down on the amount of oil that it exports. I don't know how that would be true. But, if economic sanctions go to force against Iran, then that will cut down on the supply of oil from Iran. And that's why people...
But it started going up way before this whole Iran crisis emerged.
Well, then they were speculating that President Trump would withdraw from the Iran agreement. But anyway, what shall we do? Shall we look at why people are leaving Illinois? Oh, no, we don't have time. All right, it's already time for us to quit. Please take a look at why people are leaving Illinois, especially if you're in Illinois. Maybe take a look at some of the reasons you might want to pick another state. Yes, Pennsylvania is now the fourth largest state in America by population because it has surpassed Illinois. Yes. Okay,
there you go.
Yeah.
Gun ownership.
Gun ownership, yes. But Pennsylvania also is not rising, the population is not rising as fast as other states. And so probably in the 2020 census, we're going to lose another seat in the House of Representatives. So there will be a redistricting, and the governor will have a big say in how that redistricting is done. So can you see where I'm going?
Vote Wagner.
Yes, vote Republican.
Yeah.
Yes, we need a Republican governor in the governor's house in Harrisburg because otherwise the Democrats, who I have said are part of the Communist United Front in America now, will have too much say on how that redistricting is done, and it will be done to their advantage. And the current redistricting, which was done basically by the Democrats, by the Supreme Court dominated Democrats, is going to give the Democrats at least 2 or 3 seats, at a minimum 2 or 3 seats in the House in this year's elections. And so we want to cut back, all right, want to cut back on that in 2020, after the 2020 census. So all things are going, so it's very important for us to stay involved and stay tuned to what's going on. All right, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you, Greg, for coming in. Thank you, Father, for this wonderful Rhema today that gives us hope. And thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day. This is a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday. It's Wednesday, isn't it?
Yes.
Beautiful Wednesday. Thank you. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.
What you...